Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to all those around the world. Welcome back to another Diablo IV video featuring a Flurry rogue. We're going to dive into this build real quick and get it situated so I get back to playing the game. Now, for those of you out there who are really interested in playing with this skill over Twisting Blades, I would highly recommend it. It does a lot of work. Just keep in mind, it's not as solid as Twisting Blades is in the game right now, but I would tell you what, you have a ridiculous amount of sustain. You're able to do a lot of things that Twisting Blade cannot do. You can jump into packs in which Twisting Blade needs a little bit of setup, whereas Flurry does not. And we're going to get into it. The items that we're taking today are going to be imprinted with basic skills, grant 20% damage reduction for 5.5 seconds. These are basic skills, so meaning your puncture are treated as basic skills. Use a basic skill, you would basically lose 20% damage reduction to yourself, which is really, really cool. On top of that, we take this momentum key passive. This is the top priority. If you guys can find any piece of equipment, you can imprint any piece of equipment with this ability. This allows you to sustain yourself. You get up to 3 stacks of this, okay? So I'm healing 600 per stack per second, right? If, for whatever means, you guys can find these unique pants, this is what I'm talking about right here. Lucky hit, up to 5% chance to heal for 436 life. I've seen this on yellow items. I've seen this on legendaries. I've seen this all over the place. If you guys can get an enchant that has that, 436 extra life. Flurry is AoE. Imagine you hit multiple targets at the same time and get that lucky hit proc. You're healing for all of that on top of the amount of HP you heal for Flurry. 369 right now for me per cast. That is obnoxious when it comes to healing. Again, I have like 3k HP. Every second I can heal that much health. That's not even triggering an HP pot. That's insane. And then we take the imprint for Flurry, of course, to make it AoE, which makes sense. And you've already seen these pants, but for those of you that don't know what these do, effects that heal you behind 100% grant you a barrier up to 52% of your maximum life that lasts for 8 seconds. See what I'm saying? You're always healing, therefore you're always having a barrier. See what's going on here? If you guys can find any other prefixes that give you more damage on barriers or what have you, I'd highly advise you to try that out with a build like this. On these boots, we're running vulnerable. Dealing direct damage to a vulnerable enemy has a 41% chance to daze them for 2 seconds. Daze is very, very solid in this game. Considering for Rogue, you can constantly juggle enemies, which are elites, regular mobs. You knock them down, they're still dazed. You can keep on doing this repeatedly until the DR happens. That means diminishing return. On top of that, we're taking the bow here that gives you marksman skills. 10% chance to create an arrow storm. So while they're constantly being knocked down, you're raining arrows on that enemy until they die, essentially. We're taking the attack speed for this amulet. This is better for the amulet and or two-hander weapon. Generally, I always put it on the amulet, but this allows you to get basic attack speed a lot faster, which is really, really cool. So in other words, you can spam out vulnerabilities with puncture a lot faster than normal. And then this unique ring in which we acquired from killing Lilith is a very good ring. Don't just put in your bank, don't just not use it. It's very solid. If a core skill hits 5 or more enemies, you refund 20% of the resource cost. That's really solid, right? Especially for Rogue. And then we have the imprint, which critical strikes with poison imbue skills, poison right here, poison imbuement, allows you to create a toxic field that you can stand in. As long as you're standing in that field, your poison imbuement has no cooldown, so you can constantly keep on spamming poison ability. This only applies for lucky hit. But again, lucky hit, and then lucky hit. You have healing and poison with this build setup here, let alone freezing in case you get into a sticky situation. Now, when it comes to the specialization here, we're using combo points. The reason why we're using combo points with Flurry is because we found this little beauty right here in which your core skills deal up to 38% extra damage. Increased damage when spending 3 combo points. This is something that's ideal. This dagger is very, very good, universal, even for penetrating shot. Because you auto attack 3 times and you let off the big arrow, it's the same concept with Flurry. As long as you have this dagger, you're doing a lot more damage than you normally would be. Now you can also trigger this off your basic skills. I could I could puncture 1 time, right? And then get up to 3 combo points. That quick. Just 1 hit, 3 combo points. It's very, very, very fun to play with. Now when it comes to your abilities here, I don't really want to say I diverse too much. I do a lot of things that are a little bit different here. We're definitely taking perks in which you guys wouldn't probably normally be taking. Take Rapid Gambit, and we take tricks of trade for trick attacks. These two right here, in tandem with these boots, spread daze, it allows you guys to constantly juggle enemies, meaning knock them down. Your evade cooldown is also reduced every time you daze an enemy. So keep in mind, Flurry spreads what? Vulnerable. If Flurry hits any vulnerable enemies, it will spread to all enemies for the next 3 seconds that you hit with Flurry. How do you get vulnerable in first? Puncture. You jump into a pack. After you puncture them, you Flurry. It spreads to everybody. So but then what happens here? Well, when you critically strike a dazed enemy, they're knocked down. This is what you guys saw in the previous video. You constantly can knock down elites, which is really, really good. Now, other than that, we're taking the exploit and we're taking the malice 1 and 1. You get the added extra damage for healthy and injured enemies. You get the added extra damage for vulnerable enemies. Very solid. But over here, these are self-explanatory. You take a little bit of points in poison. You get some in cold imbuement. You don't really have to put any points in here. This comes from my items. So, I mean, that's pretty good. If you can get more damage in poison, I would highly advise you to do that, considering that you're playing with the lucky hit, in which if you stand inside the poison field, you can spread more poison. So try to get as much into this as you can to get more damage out. This would help you solo bosses a lot more, kind of like Twisting Blades does, and give you sustain. Then down here, we're taking Intervention. Up to 30% chance to gain 8 energy on a lucky hit. And then you have non-physical damage dealt has a 15% chance to increase lucky hit chance rate. So non-physical damage. We're talking about poison, we're talking about imbuement, we're talking about everything of that nature to give you extra energy, which is solid. But overall, other than that, you're taking your momentum passive, which this allows you to sustain yourself inside these fights, inside all of the groups of enemies, the bosses. At 3 stacks of momentum, you gain 20% damage reduction, increase energy, and increase speed. And again, with your passive ability that you acquire from the momentum key passive, it will constantly heal you. For those of you out there who are really interested in this and how this build is actually going to set up and work, we're going to be taking the first glyph, which is called Control. Every time you deal damage to a slow, chilled, or frozen enemy, you increase your damage by 10% and or 20% if they are frozen or stunned. We don't have a lot of stuns in this build setup here, but you will have the opportunity to slow and or chill them with caltraps and your imbuement of frozen. So you increase your damage by 30% overall to crowd controlled enemies entirely. Now, other crowd controls you do have is dazed and knockdown, which you do a lot of, so you also have that opportunity to get yourself an increase of 30% damage, which is very, very phenomenal. The very first board you're going to be taking here is going to be Cheap Shot. Cheap Shot allows you to increase your damage by 5% for each nearby enemy that is called crowd controlled, in which knockdown, stun, dazed, chilled, frozen, all that sort of thing, slowed. That's 25% extra damage for free, which is very, very good. And the way we're going to be doing this is, if you guys are paying attention to the affix that we have, in which if you have a lucky hit, if you land a lucky hit, you have an opportunity of dazing a target for about 45% chance of dazing a target. Once they're dazed, you get the Cheap Shot value, and then you can also knock them down with your passive on your tree, which is really, really good. Don't forget this, guys. Your passive here, when you evade, your cooldown is reduced when an enemy is dazed, which is phenomenal. And then you have, when you critically strike a dazed enemy, they're knocked down. So you always have that chance of getting that free damage amp from Cheap Shot. And then for this node here, you take Exploit. The very first hit, doesn't matter what ability you use. It could be caltraps, it could be Flurry, it could be Twisting Blade, anything. That enemy that you hit is vulnerable for 3 seconds. And then again, they have the opportunity to be knocked down, dazed, all that sort of thing. But overall, let me know how this build does for you guys, and I will catch you guys in the very next Diablo 4 video. Stay safe out there.